4.
Okay.
I'll try and find something later. More helpful. Yeah, no, thank you for the kinetic sands. I was testing it for about an hour last night.
Ooh, I'm excited to see what you're gonna.
Yeah. Well, then we had a bunch of people come early who brought things more colorfully than I did.
Nice. I mean, I was gonna be fine with that would work.
No, not me. I don't know what the color is.
I
Let's
thought
just
about.
do nature. So Bill,
Yeah.
I think all of the hymns are ones that people know pretty well, except for
Now sing we of the brave of old.
exactly. How would you feel about playing that one through in full instrumentally,
Sure.
and then we'll have people join in on.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah. It's not a
It's not
particularly
hard, but
complicated.
it's just not for me
Yeah.
either. Yeah.
Oh, good morning and welcome, everybody. Sorry. Good morning and welcome, and congratulations for surviving the marathon. I did laugh there because as I was saying good morning, I saw the princess child come down the aisle, thus beating the marathon. I believe there are marathon donuts still remaining in the gallery. Several of us came early to avoid all of that. But as you go out, or if you've had a particularly trying morning getting here, thank you for being here. There are a couple donuts left as a thank you for that. Anyway, welcome to the Unitarian Church of Lincoln this Sunday morning. My name is the Reverend Dr. Oscar Sinclair. I am joined in the last 30 seconds on our chancel by our spot fill-in worship associate, Charlie Ahern. It is good to be together this morning. You know, the way that we gather changes. Sometimes it's a somewhat chaotic marathon morning. Sometimes it's on YouTube live stream because we cannot be bothered with the marathon. Sometimes it's on a Tuesday night watching after work. But however we gather, whenever we gather, however you come here, know that you are welcome in this space, in this time, whenever it is, and with these people. The Unitarian Church of Lincoln proclaims as the foundation of our faith that we are a loving community, uniting reason with spiritual exploration to transform ourselves and transform the world. The world needs a lot of transforming right now. So we are here together every week to proclaim not only a better world that might be possible, but to say that we here are going to be a part of building that world. It is hard work that we do, but it is hopefully joyful work. So welcome to this loving community. May we in our gathering here be about that work of transformation. And we'll start with a chalice lighting read by our Director of Religious Growth and Learning, Chelsea Krafka.
These words come to us from Linda Hogan. Sometimes I hear it talking. The light of the sunflower was one language, but there are others more audible. Once in the redwood forest, I heard a beat, something like a drum or heart coming from the ground and trees and wind. The underground current stirred a kind of knowing inside me, a kinship and longing, a dream barely remembered that disappeared back to the body. Another time there was the booming voice of an ocean storm thundering from far out at sea, telling about what lived in the distance, about the rough water that would arrive wave after wave, revealing the disturbance at center. Tonight I walk. I'm watching the sky. I think of the people who came before me and how they knew the placement of stars in the sky, watched the moving sun long and hard enough to witness how a certain angle of light touched a stone only once a year. Without written records, they knew the gods of every night, the small, fine details of the world around them and of immensity above them. Walking, I can almost hear the redwoods beating, and the oceans are above me here, rolling clouds, heavy and dark, considering snow. On the dry red road, I pass the place of the sunflower, that dark and secret location where creation took place. I wonder if it will return this summer, if it will multiply and move up to the other stand of flowers in a territorial struggle. It's winter, and there is smoke from the fires. The square lighted windows of the houses are fogging over. It is a world of elemental attention, of all things working together, listening to what speaks in the blood. Whichever road I follow, I walk in the land of many gods, and they love and eat one another. Walking, I am listening to a deeper way. And suddenly, all my ancestors are behind me. Be still, they say. Watch and listen. You are the result of the love of thousands.
Our opening hymn is number 121 in the Gray Hymnal, We'll Build a Land. While we sing that, we will attempt to light our chalice. Our lighter has gone missing, so if anybody in the year of our Lord 2023 still has a lighter in their pocket, we will happily borrow it at this time. Would you please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing We'll Build a Land while we try and figure out the lighter situation. We now have several lighters, thank you.
If anyone would like to come forward for the story, you can do so now. Our story today is called Beyond Bricks and Mortar. Once there was a little boy walking along a road. He came upon someone working and stopped to watch. And after a while of seeing the person toiling away in the sun, he asked, "What are you doing?" The person replied, I'm placing one brick upon another with mortar in between. Day after day, I pick up a brick, spread mortar on it, put it in its place. Little boy asked, "Are you happy?" The man was silent for a while and then answered, "Pays the bills, I guess that's enough." The boy went on down the road. It wasn't long before he came to a second person who was also laying bricks, and once again the child stopped to watch a while. Then he asked, "What are you doing?" The woman looked up and said, "I'm building a wall, strong and straight, sturdy and tall." The boy watched a little longer. It looked like difficult work. The woman seemed to be enjoying herself, though, and so the boy asked her, "Are you happy?" The woman smiled and said, "I'm a builder. I make things that were not here before, strong and useful things. That's enough for me." The child said goodbye and went on down the road. The day was warm, the sun was bright. The boy heard someone whistling up ahead, and as he came around the bend in the road, he saw yet a third person, and they too were picking up bricks, spreading mortar on them, and putting them neatly in place. As the child came closer, the man looked up and said, "Oh, well, now what do we have here? You look like you've traveled a fair piece. Sit down and rest a while in the shade of my wall." The boy was grateful for the shady rest, and after a time he said, "What are you doing?" The man replied, "I'm glad you asked. I'm building the support wall for a church. It will be a glorious place where people will come from miles around to sing and give thanks. Inside my wall, people will name their babies, celebrate their weddings, and say goodbye to loved ones who have died. Inside my wall, they will share community and reflect on the meaning of life, find comfort when they're sad and be challenged when they're complacent. The wall I'm building will be a home for music and laughter and tears and for all the magnificent yearnings of the human spirit. I'm building a support wall. But these bricks are the building blocks. We draw from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building upon a foundation of love. That is what a church is really all about. And the people. The people in community don't need my walls. They just need the bricks." The boy smiled at the person working. He thought on what the man said for a few minutes, and he pulled himself up tall and said, "Can you teach me to build with you?" And together they did, brick by brick. And that is the end of our story. So as we listen to Bill play our next song, the children are dismissed to their classes.
Good morning. I'm Joellen Polsey, and did you know that the shortest way to get to church from 56th and Normal is via 13th Street and Pioneer Boulevard and 84th Street? I didn't know that either. Welcome to the church, the Unitarian Church of Lincoln this morning. Over the last several years, the way we have met has often changed, but whether in person or Zoom.
That's the congregational welcome.
Okay, wrong sheet, sir. It's been a great day so far. Okay, announcement number 1. Tonight is comedy night. Join us at 6:30 for snacks and drinks, and the show starts at 7:00 p.m. And it's going to be a lot of fun and an evening of skits, puns, musical numbers, and sing-alongs. Entry is $15 at the door. I'll see all of you there, I'm sure. Don't forget that the Second Chance auction starts next Sunday, November 12th, and thank God it wasn't this Sunday. Bidding on this fall auction will all be in person. Meals and handcrafted items will be up for bid for 1 week, culminating in a tasty treat table on Sunday, November 19th. Also on November 19th, stay after the service for the first of 2 town halls. Then at 3 o'clock that same day, we are hosting the annual Interfaith Thanksgiving service. Watch your e-blast for details of all these events. Thank you.
So as part of our service every week, we set aside time to share with one another our joys and our sorrows as a community. The events that mark steps along the journeys that we take and the journey that we take together. The threads of sorrow, we say, and those of joy are intertwined in the fabric of our lives, present for all, remembered by all. And we share those threads in this space. Then they are woven together with those of others in our community. Our joys are shared and magnified. We are comforted in our sorrows. So at this time, I invite you to type into the chat if you are on live stream, or speak into this shared space your name or the name of another you wish remembered in sorrow this week.
My good friend Keith.
Keith. Jan. Jim. Ora Lee. The family of David Lionberger. The children of our Jewish friends here in the United States.
My niece Nancy is facing heart surgery.
Nancy, who's facing heart surgery. I'll add the people of Gaza, the people of Israel, the people of Ukraine, the people of Russia, the people who are caught up in a world full of violence. We also know that the story is not just one of sorrow, but there are also names and days and moments held in joy. So I invite you to type into the chat or share into this space the name of another you wish remembered in joy this week. Tessa. Angie. Archer. Eli. Jensen. Cheryl. My sister Cheryl, who just moved to Lincoln. Yes. Heather was telling me before the service started that it was over 20 people were here. Almost 20 people were here, and they got done the project that they had planned and cleaned out the garden out here, and it was an extraordinary thing. We'll send more out in writing, thanking everybody for that.
This church community, which gives me comfort when I come.
This church community, a source of comfort when you come here. In the live chat, there is a sadness for Arlene, my father's sister, the last of my parents' generation to die. And joy from Amy Miller, the loan of a rolling knee cart by Hastings Unitarian Lynn Zielinski. And something that I am not sure is a joy or a sorrow, but watching The Good Life Half-See. We know, too, that there are some joys and some sorrows that are yet unspoken but deeply felt. Some regrets that cannot be spoken yet. For instance, people that are in mile 10 of The Good Life Half-See and are regretting their choices in life but cannot speak that because they are out of breath. Let us hold a moment of silence for them. And for all those celebrating joys and sorrows not spoken in this space. Thank you for your presence. We'll remain seated for this next hymn, but will you join me in singing hymn number 352 in the gray hymnal? This is an old Transylvanian hymn, Find a Stillness.
Each week, we take up a collection to support the work of this church and our partners in the community. We do this because just as we all grow from our participation in this community, we all give back through our time, our talent, our treasure. As the music plays, the ushers will pass our offering plates. You can also give by texting UCL Lincoln and the amount to 73256. That's UC Lincoln and the amount to 73256. The offering will now be gratefully received. This poem is titled A House Called Tomorrow by Alberto Rios. You are not 15 or 12 or 17. You are 100 wild centuries. And 15, bringing with you in every breath and in every step, everyone who has come before you, and the yous that you have been, the mothers of your mother, the fathers of your father. If someone in your family tree was trouble, 100 were not. The bad do not win, not finally, no matter how loud they are. We simply would not be here if that were so. You are made fundamentally from the good. With this knowledge, you never march alone. You are breaking news of the century. You are the good who has come forward. Through it all, even if so many days feel otherwise. But think, when you as a child learned to speak, it's not that you didn't know words, it's that from centuries you knew so many. And it's hard to choose the words that will be your own. From those centuries, we human beings bring with us the simple solutions and songs. The river bridges and star charts and song harmonies, all in service to a simple idea, that we can make a house called tomorrow, and that we bring finally into the new day. Every day is ourselves. And that's all we need to start. That's everything we require to keep going. Look back only for as long as you must, then go forward into the history that you will make. Be good, then better. Write books, cure disease, make us proud, make yourself proud. And those who came before you, when you hear thunder, hear it as their applause. Now, please join me in singing hymn 107. Now sing we now, the brave of old.
Yes, so we have not sung this hymn before, but Bill is going to play it through once. I see Julie, who is our choir director, running out the door, getting the hymnal. This is an old Palestrina song, so you may recognize the tune, but not the lyrics. It's a relatively straightforward one. We just don't sing it that often. We'll listen to Bill once through, and then we'll join on the second time. I love old houses. The author Isabel Wilkerson writes, I've always lived in old houses, but old houses need lots of work. The work is never done. Just when you think you've finished one renovation, it's time to do something else. Something else has gone wrong. This is what our country is like. You may not want to go into that basement. But if you really don't go into that basement, it's at your own peril. Whatever you are ignoring is not going away. Whatever you're ignoring will be there to be reckoned with until you reckon with it. And I think that's what we're called upon to do where we are right now. We'll pick up more with that reading next week, but it is part of laying the foundation for this month of heritage that we're talking about. Bill? So last month, Stacy and I noticed a crack in our basement floor. Now, this is a concrete floor in a century-old house. Our house was built in 1914, so cracks and things are not particularly surprising or particularly worrying. It's just kind of one of those things that comes with living in an old house. There's not a single surface in our house that's perfectly level, and if you took out a square, you would not find a 90-degree angle in the entire house. Everything's just a tiny bit askew. It's a good Unitarian house. But sometime over the last year, we have rubber pads on our basement floor, and sometime in the last year, a crack had opened up under those. And it wasn't just any crack, it wasn't a hairline crack, it was a crack that was wide enough that you could put a pencil down into. And it was steep. It was about a 1/4 inch higher on one side of the basement than the other. So that's not great. And we're not the handiest people. I can paint a wall if I need to. About half the time I get it right. I am a Mason, but in a very strictly volunteer civic association sense. And living in an old house has its challenges. Like that Isabel Wilkerson reading is near and dear to us because a year ago, about this time, we had a plumber come out and look and said, oh, well, your main plumbing stack, which is an 8-inch cast iron bit of plumbing. He said, oh, that's broke. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, these things, said, they look like they're built to last forever. He says, yes, they're built to last about 100 years. So, anyway. So it was with some worry that we called a contractor out to look at our basement. Right? He spent an afternoon crawling around our basement, measuring our floors, saying exactly how big that crack was, finding out what exactly had gone wrong. We had visions of cracked foundations, right? Of having to put the whole house up on blocks while we repaired something fundamental and a century old. As it turns out, that's not where this sermon is going because it actually wasn't that complicated. The concrete floor is right above a radon mitigation system. Radon mitigation systems run a fan pretty much constantly. That dries out the ground, the concrete floor loses the ground underneath it, it cracks. There is a whole sermon here about trying to fix one problem and causing another, but that's also not the sermon that we're telling this morning. That's one for later in the year. But the contractor told us that this is actually an easy fix because the foundation of the house was solid. The foundation is not actually the floor of the basement. The foundation is the thing that the walls of the house sit on. Now, replacing that foundation would be a huge ordeal because our house is 100 years old. It uses limestone blocks, which you cannot replace because anytime you put so much stress on them to fix them, they just crumble. That is not the problem that we have. Other than a little settling over the years, he said our foundation should keep the house stable for another century. So that will be a problem of the next owners of this very old house. This month we're talking about heritage, metaphorical old houses. What does it mean for us to be a people with a particular heritage? What are the heritages that we draw on, for better or worse? And like many of our monthly themes this year, the theme of heritage draws on language of the proposed new Article 2 of the Unitarian Universalist Association bylaws, which is a thing that we are preaching on once a month. And I am never going to feel like that's a good way to introduce a topic. Because it continues to be this incredibly dry, formulation for what's a really important thing that's going on this year, right? Revising Article 2 of the UUA bylaws. Except that Article 2 is better known as the principles and sources of Unitarian Universalism, right? It is the thing that is the most concise and well-known statement of what is held in common across Unitarian Universalists, across the whole country. What is the thing that is held in common between the Unitarian Church of Lincoln, the Unitarian Church in Baltimore, in Olympia, Washington, in Hamilton, Ontario, in Nevada, is Article 2. And we're revising it. We're changing it. Last year at General Assembly, we voted on new language that would replace the whole thing. It will no longer be a list of 7 principles and 6 sources, but instead a description of who we are in this moment, a people that put love at the center of what we're doing. That's a really big change. It's a required change. Since the merging of Unitarian Universalists in 1961, we've said that we're doing this every 15 years. We're looking at this language and deciding whether or not to change it. We've actually done that. 15 years ago, we had a big revision and decided not to do it at the last minute. So the current language is about 30 years old. But this is part of who we are as a denomination, that we will reconsider the fundamentals of who we are more than once a generation, every 15 years. We Unitarian Universalists are defined as much by our willingness to move forward as for anything in particular that we stand for. So next June, delegates from this congregation will join with delegates from the rest of the Unitarian Universalist congregations across the country to vote on whether to adopt this new language. And so in preparation for that, we're spending about one Sunday a month this year talking explicitly about some of this new language. This month's theme draws from a single sentence in that revised document. The sentence is, "We, Unitarian Universalists, draw from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundations of love." I'm going to read that one more time. We draw from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundation of love. That's gorgeous language. Right now, we have a list of 6 sources of where Unitarian Universalism comes from. And this, in some ways, distills an enumerated list of 6 into a single sentence. These are the things that are core to our heritage: courage, hope, love, reason. It's a fair summary of what's best in our tradition, because we could talk about all of them, right? We could talk about courage. The courage of Martha and Waitzel Sharp getting refugees out of Europe in the 1930s. They're remembered in the Righteous Among Nations in Israel. We could preach a whole sermon on the courage of John Murray. He was the founder of Universalism in America. The story goes, he told this story, so who knows how true it is, but the story goes he was preaching in Boston, and all of a sudden somebody threw a brick through the window. And he picked up, he says, he picked up the brick in the pulpit and said, "I find this argument weighty and well delivered, but ultimately not compelling." So we have a heritage of courage that we can talk about. A heritage of hope. We can talk about Universalist abolitionist Theodore Parker preaching in the 1950s, right before the Civil War, getting up in a pulpit and saying, "The moral arc of the universe is long. I cannot see where it goes, but I know that it bends towards justice." Hope is absolutely a part of our tradition. Freedom, we could talk about the Edict of Torda. One of the very first government actions recognizing multiple religions happened pretty much the one and only time there was a Unitarian king in Europe during the Reformation. The one time that happened, the result was not a religious war. The result was an edict that said people can have their own faith, and we're not going to fight about that here. If you want to fight about it, go to Germany, go to Italy, go to Sweden. They're having lots of fights about that, but not here. Here we'll respect each other. A heritage of reason. This one is not hard in Lincoln, Nebraska. How many people in here knew Charles Stephen? Right. Ask them. There's a long history of reason and humanism in our tradition, particularly in this part of the country. And love, right? That document from the UUA says all of this is built on a foundation of love. That's what it's at the center. The new Article 2 is actually not just words, there's an image in it where they literally put love at the center. Because love comes up a lot in Unitarian Universalism, right? We side with love. We are the love people. We build on the foundations of love. One of our professional associations, Laredo, asked its members to describe Unitarian Universalism. Then they put together a word cloud with the results. That's the image that should be on the slide above me. Love is the thing that comes up over and over and over and over. Whenever you ask Unitarian Universalists what they are about as people, they say love, and then they say justice. That's another sermon. For right now, we'll talk about love. Love at the center of this faith. Love as the foundation. So one of the things that I genuinely love about the language that Article 2 is using is that it is not particularly metaphorical. It is, forgive me, concrete language. Love is the foundation of our faith. Love is the foundation. Okay, so what makes a good foundation? Here is our basement. The crack is off camera in that picture. The foundation is the base of a building, right? It's what the walls are built on. It's not the bottom floor, it's underneath the walls. That was Stacy and my mistake last month, looking at the floor of the basement and worrying about the foundation. So the foundation isn't the lowest level, but it is what bears the weight of everything above it. It's what connects the house, all the stuff that we build and live in, to the earth below it. Foundations aren't clean, especially in old buildings like my house. They're often made up of rough, uncut stones, whatever was on hand when the builders built it. And the foundation is often unseen. Most of ours you can only actually see in a crawl space. But it is the thing on which everything else depends. So what happens if you build a house without a foundation? Just on bare ground? Not a rhetorical question. Shout it out. It doesn't last. Ground is floppy. It flows. This is not good building material. And so, if you take just bare ground like that and build on it, place reason straight on the bare ground. That was upside down. It sinks. It cannot stand on its own. And so we can use all of these blocks, right? Courage, freedom, hope, reason. but you need a foundation to build on. So what do? You don't build on bare ground, right? You don't try and create a faith from freedom, reason, courage, and hope on its own. You take what you already have. You take the materials on hand, and you build a foundation. So last week we marked All Souls Day. And we asked members of the congregation who were here to come forward and write the names of people who you loved who are no longer here on these stones to build a cairn. A pile of stones to mark the way. These pile of stones are entirely uncoincidentally a pile of limestone rocks. Because what you do when you build a foundation is you take the materials that you have on hand and you start to sink it into the ground. Putting it into the soft and sometimes unstable earth. And so when we talk about building on foundations of love in a Unitarian Universalist church, I think this is what we're doing. We're taking the heritages of all of the loves that we bring to this place. These people might have been Unitarians, they might have been Universalists, they might have been Baptists, they might have been puzzled their entire life as to why somebody that they loved would go to a Unitarian church. But the legacy that they have is love. And when we do that, all of a sudden, this earth that was so squishy and so difficult to build on starts to look much different. Because now, there's a foundation there. And now, you can start building on that foundation of love. As I mentioned earlier, I am a Mason metaphorically only. And this is kinetic sand from Target, not mortar. But all the love that's in our lives, all the names we wrote on those stones, all those names that we might have written on those stones, all the names of everybody here, all of the relationships that are at the heart of the human experience that we bring to this place are the foundation for everything else that we do. And when you have a crack in that foundation, it is a real, real problem. But if you don't have a crack in that foundation, if you can draw on it, if you can figure out how to sink it into the earth, that's what connects everything that we build here to the ground below it. Everything that we build here in this church is connected to the human experience through the specific loves that we know, that we bring to this place. So we build something made of reason, freedom, courage, and love, but we bring the experience of love. That's what grounds us. That's what allows us to dream big and build high. Love is the foundation of everything that we build together. May it always be so, and amen. Our closing hymn is number 1028 in the Teal hymnal. I'll extinguish this flame, but not, as we say, the warmth of love, the light of truth, or the fire of commitment. If you would please rise and join in singing, and we will extinguish this chalice and go forth.